On July 23rd in 1878, Black Bart strikes again. He robs a Wells Fargo stagecoach in California. Wearing a forced slack over his head, the armed robber stole a small safe box with less than $400 and a passenger's diamond ring and watch. When the empty box was recovered, a taunting poem signed Black Bart was found inside. Here I lay me down to sleep to wait for the coming morrow, perhaps success, perhaps defeat, and everlasting sorrow. Yet come what will, I'll try it once. My conditions can't be worse. And if there's money in that box, there's money in my purse. This wasn't the first time that old Black Bart had robbed a stagecoach and left a poem for the police. However, it was the last time he got away with it. His next stagecoach robbery secured a lot more cash, $4,800. At a separate robbery on November 3rd in 1888, he left behind a handkerchief at the scene. Through a laundry mark, Pinkerton detectives traced the handkerchief back to Charles Bolton, an elderly man in San Francisco. Bolton later confessed to being Black Bart, but bitterly disputed his reputation as an outlaw. Quote, "I am a gentleman," unquote, he told detectives with great dignity. How Bolton became Black Bart is unclear. What is known is that Bolton had tried to hit it big in the gold rush, but had ended up with a lifestyle beyond his means. Black Bart ended up serving only a short stretch in prison and spent the rest of his days in Nevada. On July 23rd in 1885, just after completing his memoirs, Civil War hero and our former 18th President of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant, continues his eternity. The son of a tanner, Grant showed little enthusiasm for joining his father's business, so the elder Grant enrolled his son at West Point in 1839. Though Grant later admitted in his memoirs that he had no interest in the military apart from honing his equestrian skills, he graduated in 1843 and went on to serve first in the Mexican-American War, which he opposed on moral grounds, and then in California and Oregon, tours of duty that forced him to leave behind his beloved wife and children. The loneliness and sheer boredom of duty in the West drove Grant to binge drinking. By 1854, Grant's alcohol consumption so alarmed his superiors that he was asked to resign from the Army. He did, and returned to Missouri to try his hand at farming and land speculation. Although he kicked the alcohol habit, he failed miserably at both vocations and was forced to take a job as a clerk in his father's tanning business. If it were not for the Civil War, Grant might have slipped quickly into obscurity. Instead, he re-enlisted in the Army in 1861 and embarked on a stellar military career, although his tendency to binge drink re-emerged and he developed another unhealthy habit, chain cigar smoking, which probably caused the throat cancer. In 1862, Grant led troops in the captures of Forts Henry and Donelson in Tennessee and forced the Confederate Army to retreat back into Mississippi after the Battle of Shiloh. After the Donelson campaign, Grant received over 10,000 boxes of congratulatory cigars from a grateful citizenry. In 1863, after leading the Union Army to victory at Vicksburg, Grant caught President Abraham Lincoln's attention. The Union Army had suffered under the service of a series of incompetent generals, and Lincoln was in the market for a new Union Supreme Commander. In March of 1864, Lincoln revived the rank of lieutenant general, a rank that had previously been held only by George Washington in 1798, and gave it to Grant. As Supreme Commander of Union forces, Grant led troops in a series of epic and bloody battles against Confederate General Robert E. Lee. On April 9th in 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The victory solidified Grant's status as national hero, and in 1869, he began his first of 2 terms as our nation's president. Grant's talent as political leader paled woefully in comparison to his military prowess. He was unable to stem the rampant corruption that plagued his administration and failed to combat a severe economic depression in 1873. However, successes of Grant's tenure include passage of the Enforcement Act in 1870, which temporarily curtailed the political influence of the Ku Klux Klan in the post-Civil War South, and the 1875 Civil Rights Act, which attempted to desegregate public places such as restrooms, inns, public conveyances on land or water, theaters, and other places of public amusement. In addition, Grant helped to improve U.S. and British diplomatic relationships, which had been damaged by the British offer to supply the Confederate Army with tools to break the Union naval blockade during the Civil War. He also managed to stay sober during his 2 terms in office. Upon leaving office, Grant's fortunes again declined. Although he and his wife Julia traveled to Europe between 1877 and 1879 amid great fanfare, the couple came home to bankruptcy caused by Grant's unwise investment in a scandal-prone baking firm. Grant spent the last few years of his life writing a detailed account of the Civil War, and after Ulysses S. Grant continued his eternity in 1885, his wife, Julia, lived on the royalties earned from his memoirs. On July 23rd in 1996, at the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia, the U.S. women's gymnastics team wins the first ever team gold. The 1996 U.S. women's team, nicknamed the Mag 7, or Magnificent 7, was made up of 7 immensely talented teenage girls: Amanda Borden, Amy Chow, Dominique Dawes, Shannon Miller, Dominique Moceanu, J.C. Phillips, and Kerri Strug. The team entered the Summer Olympics with the expectations of an entire country heaped on their young shoulders. They were considered America's best shot ever at an Olympic team gold, something no American women's gymnastics team had ever won. The American women's best finish to that point had been a silver at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, which were boycotted by the favored Soviet Union, winner of 8 consecutive team golds between 1952 and 1980. To win the gold in 1996, the U.S. women faced a battle with perennial contender Russia and Romania, the 2-time defending world champions. Still, U.S. fans believed the odds were good. The team had deep reserves of talent, and each of its members was capable of winning events. When the team competition began, veteran U.S. star Shannon Miller did not disappoint, delivering an impressive performance to place second overall to the Ukrainian world champion Lilia Podkolpeyeva. I hope I enunciated that right. Lilia Podkolpeyeva. That sounds right. The final event of the team competition for the U.S. was the vault. 14-year-old Dominique Moceanu, the first American to compete, had a chance to clinch the gold for her team with a solid performance, but was unable to stick the landing on her first attempt. As the pro-American crowd gathered in Atlanta held their breath, Moceanu took off her second vault and again slipped and fell on the landing. This left it up to Strug, America's second and final vaulter, to seal the win. On her first attempt, Strug also fell on the landing and heard an alarming pop in her ankle. The team and coach, Bela Karolyi, were unaware that the team had won whether Strug vaulted again or not. So Strug bravely readied herself to vault on her badly sprained ankle. After executing a perfect 1.5 twisting Yurchenko, Strug landed solidly on 2 feet. She then spun and hopped on 1 foot towards the judges' table before collapsing in pain. When her 9.712 was announced, she celebrated in the arms of her coach, who would later have to carry the 4' 9" spark plug, Strug, to the medal stand. All historic information divulged and documented on this audio file can be verified on history.com.